Hello and welcome to Chapter 3 of the NSCA's Guide to Program Design. So this one is all about the dynamic warm-up. So it's important for all athletes to warm up, but this chapter breaks down the exact protocols of warming up and breaks down some of the long-held myths of warming up and what should be done to warm up. So these effects of raising the core temperature, enhancing metabolic reactions, and improving joint range of motion can boost athletic performance by enhancing oxygen delivery, increasing the speed of nerve impulse transmissions, improving rate of force development, and maximizing strength and power. Moreover, a well-designed warm-up can set the tone for upcoming activities and establish a desired tempo for practice or competition. So the interest in different warm-ups, a lot of the old school mentality was sit and stretch, static stretches to open up the muscles. And while that does show long-term benefits, it's not so good for pre-event warm-ups. So the interest in growing in warm-up procedures that involve dynamic activities and sport-specific movements that maximize active ranges of motion at different movement-specific speeds while preparing the body for the demands of the sport and competition. So as you can see, these 5 references right here, we'll go through it. So I've included those in the Facebook group itself. So this chapter reviews the traditional warm-up views and examines the potential benefits of a dynamic warm-up. This one is really reference intensive, and the references really give a good understanding of the exact scientific research behind some of the points made in this chapter. So right here, traditional warm-up consists of 2 components. The first is a general warm-up of 5 to 10 minutes of low to moderate intensity cardiorespiratory exercise, such as jogging, stationary bike, followed by several minutes of static stretching. The second is a specific warm-up that involves low-intensive movement similar to sport or activity about to be performed. The purpose of this type of warm-up is to allow the body to gradually adjust to the changing physiological demands of the exercise session without undue fatigue. A general warm-up of basic exercises for the major muscle groups increases heart rate, blood flow, muscle temperature, core temperature, as evidenced by the onset of sweating. Static stretching exercises in which the body position is held stationary for a predetermined period, usually 10 to 30 seconds, are habitually recommended by some sports coaches to improve range of motion within joints, enhance performance, and reduce the risk of injury prior to activity. However, conventional beliefs regarding the routine practice of pre-event static stretching have recently been questioned. So, goes through the exact dynamics of the static stretching model and why that is not so good. So, there's little evidence that pre-event static stretching prevents activity-related injury, even the ones who require a high level of flexibility, such as gymnastics, weightlifting, diving. And then a growing body of research indicates pre-event static stretching of the prime movers has a negative correlation to force production, power output, strength, endurance, reaction time, and running speed. So I would definitely encourage you guys to go through these different sections of the reference. They include a lot of the research that's been done on those. So it gives you an idea and an understanding of those elements and what they are testing and what the dynamics are. So then it goes into stretching-induced effect is thought to be related to a decrease in neural activation, reduced musculotendinous stiffness, or a combination of neural and muscular factors. Since it creates muscle damage, it also possible that tissue damage could explain why the performance enhanced or is decreased. So it's kind of a good thing to know when you are training athletes. That's not to say static stretching should be eliminated from an athlete's program. It should be sensibly incorporated into the daily training regimen, such as chronic stretching can enhance the range of motion around a joint and potentially improve strength and power performance. So there is a study in the reference section that shows a positive correlation to static stretching long-term and overall strength and power performance. And in some cases, for example, gymnastics, sports that require high level of flexibility may benefit from pre-event static stretching, but that is specific to the sport involved. So it also goes through and says when you're training athletes, sometimes this static stretching model has been used for such a long time that athletes have a little bit of pushback and it's hard to get the buy-in. So just go slowly with introducing more of a dynamic warm-up procedure, and that should help them move over into a more scientific model. So dynamic warm-up protocols that stimulate the overall movements. This type of training typically includes movements of low, moderate, and high intensity that increase body temperature, enhance motor unit excitability, develop kinesthetic awareness, and maximize active ranges of motion. The term movement preparation is also used to describe this type of training because it usually prepares the athlete to move. It is important to note that dynamic exercises do not involve bouncing type movement that is characteristic of ballistic stretching, but rather a controlled elongation of specific muscle groups. So like here they have the walking lunge, so controlled lunge. Higher intensity movements are needed to optimize performance, therefore they should be recognized as an important component of pre-event protocol. For example, track and field athletes such as long jumpers should begin their warm-up with side shuffles and then progress to power skips. Sprinters should begin with high steps and then perform a series of sprint drills to better prepare to perform at maximal levels during sport practice and competition. Prior to a weightlifting workout, plyometric jumps and explosive exercise with medicine balls could be used to prepare athletes for the upcoming training session. So, regardless of the movement, proper technique and mechanics should be enforced. So then it goes into post-activation potentiation. That is essentially getting the muscles to start firing and inciting them to be ready for muscular activation. So right here it says post-activation potentiation may create an optimal environment for athletic performance by increasing phosphorylation of the regulatory myosin light chains, enhancing muscular function, or possibly changing pennation angle. So a lot of scientific mumbo-jumbo goes into why these actually help our athletes perform better. So it would be the equivalent of doing a walkout. If you're doing back squat, you walk out with 110, 115% of your 1 rep max, and then you drop it back down to 105% of your 1 rep max, and that weight feels easier because the motor neurons are activating at a higher percentage to perform at their optimal level, and then even if it's over your 1 rep max, it's easier for the motor neurons to recruit the actual muscles that are needed. So the potentiation factor and fatigue can coexist. So it's really important that the interaction between these two are part of your program design, and when you're implementing warm-up procedures, you can understand the different athletes, and what may fatigue one athlete is just the proper amount of potentiation for another athlete. So it's really important to know your athletes and know what warm-up strategies you should be using inside of a event or competition mindset. So a number of studies were done on youth and athlete and adult athletes. Goes over a ton of research. So here's the important thing to take into consideration. Many factors need to be considered when applying the principles of post-potentiation activation to athletic performance, namely training experience, individual power, strength ratio, intensity, volume of the pre-event activity, and the recovery period can influence the efficacy of any performance-enhancing stimulus. Additionally, individual variability should be considered when examining the application to activities that require dynamic muscle contractions. Okay, and then it goes into mental preparation. So the mental preparation is actually the speed or the tempo. So you don't want to have a very slow warm-up protocol that's very monotonous prior to going into competing, because then you're not going to be mentally ready to perform at a high intensity. Then we move on to developing a dynamic warm-up protocol. So there are 3 parts when developing a warm-up protocol. Number 1, warm up. Number 2, activate. And number 3, motivate. So warm-up highlights the importance of increasing the body temperature. Activate refers to exciting or potentiating the neuromuscular system. And motivate draws attention to the need to psychologically prepare athletes for the demands of sports practice and competition. Instead of jogging around the playing field, a general warm-up of jump rope, bodyweight calisthenics, medicine ball exercises, footwork patterns with an agility ladder, or sport-specific actions such as dribbling a soccer ball around cones can contribute to movement skill development and make a valuable contribution to the overall conditioning process. Okay, so going into different elements. A fundamental principle of a dynamic warm-up is to perform large muscle group exercises that are similar to the movement patterns that will be performed during training or competition. Dynamic warm-up routines do not require equipment or a lot of space. Athletes typically perform each functionally based movement in place for a prescribed number of repetitions, normally 8 to 12, or cover a predetermined distance, normally 10 to 20 meters. Normally, athletes complete 8 to 12 different exercises that progress from relatively simple movements to more challenging movements involving more complex movement patterns that require greater ranges of motion. So this can help the overall athlete and the overall conditioning program in a time-efficient manner. And then performance may deteriorate if a warm-up is too intense or if the muscles do not have an opportunity to recover from the fatigue induced during pre-event dynamic warm-up protocol. So if your warm-up is too intense, then that can be detrimental to the overall competition or the event that your athlete is performing in. So then you go into the dynamic warm-up exercises. You have arm hugs, heel to toe walks, so going up on your tippy toes while you're walking, high knee walks, bringing the knees in, the wood choppers, dropping the medicine ball down like the hammer of Thor. Then you've got the trunk twists right here. You've got the stepping trunk twists right here. The trail leg walking, so bringing it up and around. The leg cradle, grabbing the foot, bringing it in. Quad walk, grabbing the foot, bringing it to the butt. The inchworm, that one's one of my favorite ones. Straight leg kick. Inverted hamstring, or going out to this this Warrior 2 here, or Warrior 3 actually that would be. Lunge walk with reach, lunge walk with elbow to the instep. This one's really good for warming up the inside of that hip and warming up a lot of those hip musculature. The backward lunge, lateral lunge, really good one. High hurdle step, just big hurdle steps. Karaoke, of course, standard. Glute kicks, butt kickers. You've got the skip taps, so tapping the inside of the foot as you're going along. So to wrap it all up, active participation in a well-designed dynamic warm-up can prepare athletes both physically and mentally for the demands of sports training and competition. Despite conventional wisdom that favors pre-event static stretching, a growing number of evidence indicates dynamic movements are a little bit more sensible as far as a warm-up protocol and may improve performance overall just by increasing body temperature, enhancing ranges of motion, and improving neuromuscular function. So there's more to just the general warm-up procedures here. Each athlete and each sport is going to be slightly different depending on which athletes you're working with. A warm-up should be carefully planned and thought out to the same degree as the main exercise session or event. Alright, you guys, hope you enjoyed that one. See you guys on the next one. What I want you guys to do is actually post in the Facebook group any warm-up strategies that you guys use, or if you have a specific warm-up routine that you use with a lot of your clientele, post that in the Facebook group, and let's see if we can get a discussion going. Alright guys, see you on the next one. Then we move on to developing a dynamic warm-up protocol. So there are three parts developing a warm-up protocol. Number one, warm-up. Number two, activate. Number three, motivate. So warm-up highlights the importance of body temperature. Activate refers to exciting or potentiating the neuromuscular system. And motivate draws attention to the need. Psychologically prepare athletes for the demands of sports practice and then we move on to jogging around the playing field, a general warm-up. So there are three parts: bodyweight patterns, medicine ball, agility patterns with an agility ladder, dribbling a specific action, and number three, contribute to movement. So warm-up can contribute to valuable contribution to the overall exciting, potentiating the neuromuscular system. And motivate draws attention to the need. Okay, going into different psychologically prepare athletes for the demands of sports practice. A fundamental principle of a dynamic warm-up. Fundamental principle of jogging around the playing field. A general warm-up. Large jump rope. Large muscle group exercises that are similar. Large muscle group exercises agility ladder during training or actions performed during training. Dynamic warm-up routines can contribute to dynamic warm-up routines or require valuable perform space to the functionally typically based movement in place for prescribed number of repetitions or cover a predetermined distance or cover a predetermined distance. Normally athletes 20 meters. 12 normally exercises that progress well of a dynamic warm-up challenging movements, large involving more challenging movement patterns involving more large muscle group exercises that are similar to require greater patterns of motion. So this can performed during training. So this can help the overall dynamic warm-up routines do not require program equipment or a lot of space. Athletes typically perform may deteriorate and warm-up performance movement in place for prescribed number of repetitions, cover from the 12 or cover from the fatigue induced during pre-event meters. So normally athletes compete 8 to 12. So different exercises that progress from really simple movements to more challenging movements involving more complex movement competition that require greater ranges of motion, competition or the event. So this can help the overall athlete and the event exercises. You have dynamic hub exercises. You have arm hub toe walks. So heel performance may deteriorate while you're walking. High knee walks, or if the muscles while you're walking do not have an opportunity wood chopper from the feet in, wood chopper down, dropping the medicine ball down. Then you've got the warm up is then you've got trunk twists. Then that can can be detrimental.
Trunk twist,
the
stepping
trunk twists. You've got the
stepping
trunk twists,
competition,
trail leg
or
walking,
the event,
the
trail leg
walking,
the leg
cradle
around the
foot,
the leg
in,
cradle
exercises,
quad walk,
arm
in,
hugs,
grabbing the foot,
quad walk,
heel to
butt,
toe walk,
inchworm,
inchworm,
walking,
high knee walk,
inverted
hamstring,
knees
in, inverted choppers,
drop
your
two
two medicine ball down,
warrior
warrior
2
here.
Lunge walk, reach,
lunge walk,
elbow
trunk
to the
twist,
instep. This
lunge
is
walk
really
here,
good for
elbow
warming
to
up
the instep,
the
stepping
side
trunk
of that,
twist,
warming up the
hip inside of that,
up a lot of those
hip trail leg walking,
a lot of those hip musculature.
The backward lunge,
the leg,
lateral lunge,
backward lunge,
lateral lunge,
step,
really good one.
quad walk,
high hurdle step,
karaoke,
of course,
big
hurdle
standard,
step,
karaoke, of course,
inchworm,
standard, one of my
you've got
favorite
skip
ones,
tap
straight leg
kickers,
kick,
you've got
the
inverted hamstring, inside of the
going out
foot,
to this
inside of the foot
here.
Warrior
So to
3
wrap it all
actually,
up,
that would be
lunge walk,
participation in a well-designed participation in a well-designed
really good
physically
warm-up
and
to
mentally
prepare
for the
athletes
inside of that
physically
and mentally
hip
for the demands of
and
sports
warm up
training,
a lot of those
despite
hip
conventional wisdom that favors
despite
prevent
conventional
wisdom that
backward
favors
lunge,
prevent
rowing
static
lateral
stretching,
lunge, really good one,
rowing number
high
of
hurdle
evidence
step,
indicates
big
dynamic,
hurdle
more
steps
sensible,
karaoke,
as far
of course,
as a little bit more sensible,
and
as
glute
far as
kicks,
a warm-up
butt kickers,
protocol,
and
you've got
may
the
improve
skip
just
taps,
by
so
tap
increasing
in
body
just
temperature
by
and
enhancing
inside
range
of the
body
foot,
temperature,
enhancing range of
going
motion
along.
and improving neuromuscular
So
function.
to wrap it all up,
So there's
active
more to
participation
just
in a
well-designed,
general
more to
warm-up
just
procedures
general
here,
physically
each
and
warm-up
mentally
procedures
athlete
here,
sports
each
training and
sport
competition athlete
is
and
going to
each
be
slightly
despite
different conventional wisdom that
slightly
favors
different
static
depending which
stretching
athletes you're
a
working with.
growing number of evidence
Which athletes
warm-up
you
should be
can
carefully
dynamic
planned
movements
and thought
are
out.
a warm-up should be
The
carefully
same
planned
degree
and thought out
as far
exercise,
as
the
warm-up
same degree
protocol
as the main
may improve
exercise
performance
session
overall.
overall. You guys, hope you enjoyed that one.
You
guys,
body
that one.
temperature.
What I want you guys to do is actually post any warm-up strategies that you guys use, warm-up strategies that you guys use, warm-up procedures here,
routine that you
post
use with a lot
that
of your
in the
clientele.
Facebook group.
Post that in the slightly different,
Alright guys, see you on the next
depending
one.
on
Alright guys, see you on the
which
next
athletes
one.
you're working with. A warm-up should be carefully planned and thought out to the same degree as the main exercise session or event. Alright you guys, hope you enjoyed that one. See you guys on the next one. What I want you guys to do is actually post in the Facebook group any warm-up strategies that you guys use, or if you have a specific warm-up routine that you use with a lot of your clientele, post that in the Facebook group and let's see if we can get a discussion going. Alright guys, see you on the next one.